What was your I need to grow up moment that actually made you grow up?
Oh, man. So, we're going to talk about those I need to grow up moments. Those moments in your life when you go through something and you just go, oh my God, I can't keep doing this stuff. I got to grow up. I got to stop acting like a kid and take some responsibility and make something of my life. Boy, I really hope I get one of those moments soon. Story 1. I got pulled over doing 90 miles per hour in a 55. I was 17 and in my state is when you are legally an adult. Was still in high school and on my way back from my military drill that weekend. The officer had me stop the engine, get out, and then proceeded to handcuff me on the side of the road in my uniform and have me sit on the grass. Then we proceeded to have a nice long talk about making choices and the consequences of my actions if I had crashed or lost control and what would happen if he booked me for this. Reckless endangerment, operating a motor vehicle 35 miles per hour in excess of the speed limit, reckless driving. I was going to be one effed teenager. He then took off the handcuffs, handed me my keys, and told me that he had never seen my name come up anywhere for anything ever again before letting me go. I was shaking so bad I could barely drive off the highway. Suffice to say, I've never had another traffic violation. Major props to that good cop who taught you a major lesson and let you go rather than book you for all those things. Great example of effective instruction/correction. I had a scared straight moment as well. I thought it would be a great idea to just stop paying bills, including my car insurance. I was massively depressed, and this was a symptom. Turns out the state I lived in will hound you for a while via mail. Then they will send you one final pink notice before suspending your license. Did I pay any attention to these? Nay, I did not. Was I still driving my crappy minivan to and from work? You bet I was. If you're caught driving with a suspended license, they like to give you a new set of bracelets, if you know what I mean. They thought of the shame I would feel for getting arrested. Dad was friends with a lot of local cops, nagged at me, but I was hoping I could rectify the situation before I got caught. One day I decided to go home for lunch, literally doubling down on my chances of getting caught. I was dumb. And I impatiently passed someone on the right, and all because I was speeding, of course. Bam! Flashing lights behind me. My heart sank immediately into my stomach. My mouth went dry and my hands started to sweat. I remember panicking that I had to explain to the officer that my window wouldn't roll down and questioning if I should open my door before or after he came up to my car. I didn't want him to think I was getting out. Not sure why Brain decided to focus on that detail rather than the fact that I had no license or proof of insurance to give him. I must have turned pale as a ghost because the officer asked if I was going to pass out. I said, maybe, and I just started spilling my guts about my crappy job, my crappy life, my crappy ex, and my crappy self. He didn't say much except, okay, pepper in my paprikash. Well, you are in a very serious situation. And he walked back to his cruiser with his hand on the handcuffs. I was doomed. When he came back, he had a slip of paper with his phone number on it. He said he understood that sometimes we feel hopeless, and it can make you do stupid things like not pay your bills. I had told him where I was working, and so he knew I had a job. He told me he was going to let me go, but he wanted me to save $100 and donate it somewhere and send him proof for my fine. He stressed that once I left, I didn't legally have to comply, but he said he hoped that I would. Then he left me with this. When you donate that money, you'll be doing a few things that need to happen in your life. First, giving will make you feel good. It seems like you could use a little good. I was crying my eyes out, couldn't believe how nice he was. Second, when you text me your proof of donation, you'll show that you can meet an obligation. And third, if you can donate $100, then that proves you can also save your money and pay the fines to get your license back and get insurance, even if it's crap. He made me leave my car, my sister picked me up, and then he left. Officer Greg, if you're out there, that experience taught me so much and was a definite turning point in my life. I donated to an animal shelter, sent him a pic of the check, and started to slowly get my crap together. I might have a lot of problems with the police system. I've said it many times on this channel, but I won't deny that there are good people out there on the force who are doing some good things. And these officers showed a remarkable compassion for people and helping out these two different folks in situations that could have been ruinous for their life. It could have been the first domino tipped over that could have just thrown things completely out of whack for them. And so I'm really glad to hear that, a situation that could have been terrible ended up being a life-changing moment for them. That's really nice to hear. So glad things worked out.
Story 2. Living with roommates. As a teenager and in my early 20s, I figured being lazy with dishes wasn't that big a deal. It's just a little smelly, it's nothing. Some elbow grease and barkeeper's friends can't make good as new, right? Washing dishes is a pain, it's annoying, my feet hurt, my belly gets all wet. It's no big deal if I let them sit. Then I lived with roommates who didn't do their dishes for days at a time, left them to sit with nasty, starchy food on them to rot and stink, put them on the drying side for weeks at a time, and never put them away. I was forced to wash my dishes by hand because there was only room around the sink for me to hold up a single plate over their mountain of dishes and wash it slowly so as not to get soap on the drying dishes, which probably would have helped. The thing on that side frequently weren't even effing clean. The rare moments when the sink was clear were like a rainbow for me. I would stare at it sometimes just overjoyed that I could use the sink. I could cook in the kitchen and let my pans cool down instead of burning my hands cleaning them immediately after cooking, leading to my food getting cold. But inevitably, within 2 or 3 days, it'd be full again, and the cycle continues. We moved out because of this. We couldn't stand being in the kitchen because it was a complete crappy for 128 of the 132 days we lived there. We were supposed to save money there, but we just spent the same amount as usual by eating out for every damn meal because we were too grossed out to use the kitchen or even just be in the house sometimes. It really made me realize how nasty I'd been before this, how unreal it was to assume people would be fine with nasty crap in my sink and a gross kitchen. I no longer leave dishes in the sink for more than 24 hours. If it went in at 9 p.m. last night, it comes out before 8 p.m. tonight. I don't even use a dishwasher anymore. I hand wash everything pretty much immediately because it was so traumatizing to see how dirty the crap on the drying side was. I don't trust machines anymore. I made a lot of excuses for myself as a teenager. I made my mom's life that much worse by shirking my one chore because it's gross and my feet hurt. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. I'm an adult. It sucks, but it's not that hard, and then I get to have a clean kitchen, which is a genuinely healing experience.
I started off being terrible about dishes too. My very first apartment was a little upstairs duplex thing, and I wasn't great about dishes, and my second roommate was worse about them. And that was rough for me, and it still took me forever. I hated doing dishes. But eventually I did make doing the dishes every morning part of my routine. Every morning, before I really get running with the day, I do all the dishes. And it sucked at first and it wasn't fun, but you know what? Just like this person said, at the end of it, I'd have a clean kitchen, and I would start my day by accomplishing something and having this clean kitchen around me to see, and that feels amazing. And now I do it every morning, but sometimes I'll even do some dishes in the evening as a little treat to morning me. So when I get up in the morning, it's like, I don't even have to do the dishes. I already did them. So, folks, if you struggle with that stuff, make it a daily part of your routine. Try it out. See if that works for you.
Story 3. When I was 22 to 23, I would always insult my brother as a joke. I never complimented him or anything. One day he kind of exploded on me, and before I could say something, I realized he was right. All I did was try to bring him down for no reason. I stopped, which ironically enough annoyed him for a while because I would throw in compliments and stopped insulting him. I met a girl freshman year of college, and we were just like that, constantly dissing each other and pretending we found it funny. One time we were drunk and she told me, "Don't think you've ever said one nice thing to me." Up until that point, I'd never thought of it that way. I started dialing back on the insults, and she did the same. Flash forward to a few years later, and we're best friends who actively try to build each other up instead of breaking each other down for laughs. Be nice to your friend. Bros ripping on each other is an ancient and honorable tradition, but it has to be a two-way street. If one of your bros isn't ripping back, you need to adjust to that dynamic and treat them accordingly, or else they'll adjust you out of their life.
So back in my 20s, I did a lot of stand-up comedy, and there was a lot of ribbing each other, because I'm around other people doing stand-up at open mics and stuff, and we always want to show off our comedy chops, and so we're constantly ripping on each other. And that bled over into my normal day-to-day life, where I was ripping on friends and stuff like that. I had to have a take on everything. And not everyone enjoys that stuff. I did learn. I had some friends who were just like, I don't like that. And I had to learn, hey, you have to treat friends how they want to be treated sometimes. And yeah, like this person said, if someone's not ripping back, if it's not this mutual thing, it can suck and it can wear on a person. Even if it's just a joke, it can still kind of chip away at people.
Story 4. When my mom was dying, I had to square with a whole lot of suck it up and deal moments with myself so that crap could get done. She'd been sick for a long while, but had always been private about it until the last few months when she was rapidly getting worse, especially when my grandmother also got horribly ill at the same time. I got used to the sight and smell of bile real fast, and with the fact that I needed to catch my mom's puke in a bowl because she couldn't walk to the toilet. I got used to spending nights and weekends in hospital rooms so that mom would have someone with her while dad was checking in on grandma. I got used to calmly talking about end-of-life arrangements because that stuff had to be taken care of. I even got used to not being able to talk about it with anyone because who was I going to spill to? Everyone else in the family was dealing with a much worse scenario than I was. It sucked horribly, and it was the worst year of my life, but it was definitely a growing experience in terms of just learning how to get crap done, even in the most horrific circumstances. Story 5. I was 15. I had a stepfather who hated kids, and my mom had 4, me being the youngest. The eldest 2 bailed as soon as they had the chance because our family was terribly dysfunctional. Stepdad would get drunk and abuse my mom. We tried many times to stop him or get the cops involved, but she always backed him up. There came a day when Stepdad decided that he didn't want to abuse Mom, he'd come upstairs after me. Being a malnourished 15-year-old facing a drunken ex-boxer with a history of violence was enough to make a boy freeze up. I couldn't freeze up, though, or my life would basically be over. I couldn't let the next 5 minutes go his way. So by the time he got to the top of the steps, I was waiting for him with a baseball bat. Not as much of an equalizer as Sam Colt would recommend, but it did the trick. I beat the monster, I grew up. My mom and stepdad moved out almost immediately, her choosing him over us. She said when we graduated high school, she'd sell the house, so be ready. But my next oldest brother, it was just him and me at that point, was into drinking and threw me out. Good times. Well, crap.
That is a terrifying moment of having to grow up, but I am glad to hear that you ended up okay and you ended up getting away from those folks. I am sorry with how it all went down. That's heartbreaking. But just know that that family never has to be a part of your life again if you don't want them to. And I would encourage you to find a family that respects you the way that you deserve.
Story 6. In my late 20s, my mom needed open heart surgery, so I moved home for over a year to look after her. Up until that point, I honestly can't think of a single responsible thing I'd really done. Story 7. I started teaching right out of college at age 22. I got a job in a Title I school teaching 5th grade science and social studies. Most students were held back at least once, and I had several students who were 12 and 13 years old. On the first day of school, I remember feeling so strange that I could shut my classroom door and be trusted to be responsible for the science and civic education of 90, 3 sections of 50 kids, 5th graders, at age 22. My first few years of teaching taught me a lot about how the world worked. I also grew a thick skin, learned to stand up for myself, and developed a desire to always improve myself. Story 8. Walked into the rehab center I had left 6 months prior. December 2006, I had been a drug addict for 15 years, and even the people who desperately loved me were about to cut me off. I knew in my heart that this was my last chance to get my life in order, otherwise it would be the end.
Huge props to the OP for taking that step. It cannot possibly be easy. Rehab is anything but easy. It is a super difficult thing from what I've heard from friends. And folks, if you or someone you love is, struggling with some kind of addiction that's affecting their life, I hope you can convince them or convince yourself to give it a shot. You're worth it.
Story 9. A key moment in my development happened in a stubborn job I had when I was 18. One of my duties at this small industrial facility was to open up the garage-style overhead doors at the start of the day and close them at the end. One day I went to close them and discovered one had been pulled so far up that the roller had come out of its track and I couldn't get it to go back down. I got Frank, the low man on the totem pole at this place, besides me and the other summer hand. He looked up at it and said, "Did you do this?" I hemmed and hawed and explained that it wasn't my fault, that there should have been a stop or a guide or something to keep that from happening. Again, he asked, "Did you do this?" Again, I evaded. Finally, he said, "Stop making excuses, admit you effed up, and let's fix it." I almost uttered some BS, but instead said, "Yeah, I did effed that up. Let's fix it." And we did. That lesson is still fresh after a third of a century. Story 10. Realizing that I want to spend my life with someone, but don't have the means to move in with them, get married, start a life, etc. I started driving. I haven't driven due to fear and mostly got rides everywhere, and got a real job. I'm saving up to get a home with my partner so we can have a happy life together. Story 11. I had a child. It wasn't just me and my adult, fully capable wife who could take up the slack if I screwed up. I now had this helpless little person relying on me. Until she was born, I hadn't held a job for over a year. I then had that job for 8 years, and when I did switch jobs, there was a significant pay increase, and now I've been there 4 years. Story 12. Right when I graduated college and moved out on my own, I received around a $100,000 inheritance and started spending money like it was nothing, to the point where I finally checked my finances and realized I had spent $30,000 in 9 months. It was only when I ran through the numbers that I realized I was being a total, complete idiot. I think this really helped later on in life, though. It caused me to save and invest as much money as possible, even when I had a really well-paying job. While people at my level were buying either a Lexus or a Mercedes, I was clinging on to my Honda Civic, then later bought a Prius.
Oh, see, that is, I think, the worst time to receive a bunch of money. Right out of college. You're excited for the world. There's so many things to spend money on. Yeah, it would be so easy to just blow through, you only did $30,000 in 9 months. I know people where that money would be gone within like a month. There are some folks who would have received that and been like, now I can buy an $80,000 car. And it's like, well, okay, $80,000 on the car. And, you're going to lose most of the rest of it with, taxes and maintaining it, and so I guess it's gone now. So I'm glad that you managed to learn a lesson from that all by yourself. Good on you.
Story 13. When I realized that I needed to start socializing with people, otherwise I couldn't get anywhere in life. I'm mostly an introvert, and I hate to go outside because the grind never stops. At some point, though, I realized that if I never socialized, I wouldn't make any friends and would never feel good about myself whatsoever. Ever since that moment, I started going out with people, chatting with people online, and I started expressing myself a little better. Story 14. After I dropped out of college, I worked at a Home Depot as a cashier for a while. Then I got fired for never showing up on time. After not being able to cut it as a cashier in retail, I thought, it's probably time to get my act together, huh? I did. Currently, I write code that organizes financial data. Story 15. Realizing that going to IT school to become a programmer when I wasn't even interested in that line of work was why I had depression, was alone, and always angry. I'm now going for art and design, have incredibly calmed down, and found myself the love of my life. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Alrighty. Mainly facts.